Okay, this is the very first podcast of Evangel Downtown, and the podcast is called. Logan, can you tell us what the podcast is called?
The podcast is called Backstage Pastor. Woohoo!
Actually, wait, how about this one?
Boom.
Okay, Logan told me ahead of time not to do that because it's cheesy.
But cheesy.
But this is actually the very first Backstage Pastor, and we're all a little bit nervous.
You can hear yourself so clearly.
Yeah, you can hear yourself so clearly. You can hear all the little...
Like that.
The little voice sounds.
all the little sounds.
This is fun, guys. We're cool.
Okay, so the reason behind Backstage Pastor is exactly as the title says. There are so many different things in Evangel that happen, from testimonies. You guys chime in wherever.
Yeah.
You guys ooh me wherever.
Ooh.
There's so many things that happen in Evangel, from testimonies to staff stuff to leadership stuff to conflict to our favorite members of Evangel.
No, we don't do that.
We don't have those.
We don't. Pastors don't play favorites like parents don't play favorites.
My favorite member is my wife.
You know,
Does
my
that work?
favorite.
Nice. That's great. That's safe.
My favorite is Tiana.
Nice.
She didn't speak her favorite.
Who's your favorite, Tiana? Favorite member? Come on.
Be someone that's related to me, probably.
Me.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has actually been a long time in the making, probably since early COVID. We've wanted to do a podcast, but it felt like everybody and their dog started a podcast in early COVID. And so that's probably the reason why we were like, okay, we don't actually want to start a podcast. Everyone started a podcast. So let's be cool and start a podcast 4 years later, after half of those podcasts have kind of died out. So there's lots of stuff that we want to process as a leadership team, as a staff team. There's lots of people that we want to process with and ask them questions. I even think, like, not just staff members, like a whole bunch of our Evangel people, different pastors from around the world, pastors from around Fort St. John, that it just gives us a platform to be able to have those conversations. Whereas a Sunday morning, word has it, Evangel is already going 2 hours and 10 minutes long on a Sunday morning.
Yep.
And so there's just not enough time on a Sunday morning to process those things. So we want this place to just be not a place where we interview people per se, but where we actually just talk with each other.
Totally.
How we talk,
process things
together. And we're missing Jordan, which we're all sad about.
My wife.
And we're missing Vadim. Vadim too was going to be on the podcast, but he leaves for Texas tomorrow. So that's why he's not here. And he was a bit awkward sitting between them on the couch there. So we're super excited about Backstage Pastor. We hope you guys are encouraged. Where do we talk, by the way, when we're talking in a podcast? I guess just to each other.
Feels like we should be
talking.
talking to people, like the cameras.
Yes, or have a little audience kind of set up.
Just behind that window there.
Yeah. You know what we could do? We could have pictures of all our
that's a good
parish
idea.
On that
Every
wall.
single person that walks through Evangel.
So it feels like you're talking to them.
Yeah.
We have like no.
Logan's like, no.
Stop that train of thought.
So we just want this to be a real vulnerable place where we can process the happenings.
Yeah.
From our marriages to testimonies to.
Yeah.
And I think even like bigger picture is beginning to lead forward into a culture that is vulnerable at the point of leadership. Because so many narratives and many people have been a part of stories like this where there's secrecy or there's just weird stuff happening in leadership or there's this disconnect from the leadership and the rest of the house.
Right.
And I think that's just lame. That's super lame. And so just even I think lead into a culture of vulnerability. We're just all in this together. We're all family members. Yes, God has placed us in leadership. Here's what he's saying to us. It's not a secret. Here's what's happening in my life. I had a terrible weekend. This didn't actually happen, but let's say example, terrible weekend with my
You don't
family.
have terrible weekends.
Never. No,
actually.
we're always connected as a family.
Yep.
Or me and my wife always connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
But just to like, nope, this is actually what was happening for me.
Right.
This is how I processed it with myself, with my family, with the Lord. Yeah, just to make like church is not a facade performance
Come on,
thing. It's,
preach.
It's just our life. It's just our life.
Come
and
on.
It's, yeah. Wow. Wrong sound effect. It's just our life, and it's how we're journeying towards the Lord together. So why can't it be messy, raw, real, and vulnerable? And why can't we let people into that? There's nothing special about who we are that can't be seen by the rest of everybody. So yeah.
Right. And it's hard to do that on Sunday morning.
Yeah, it's not really the right spot for it, maybe.
Yeah. And it's hard to connect with people closely on a Sunday morning, or even go to that vulnerable place maybe.
Yeah.
On a Sunday morning.
Or it feels like maybe selfish to talk about what's happening in our marriage or whatever. It's like, you know, we're after the Lord. Obviously marriage is included in that, but this is just a
right.
Our MO, we want our MO as leadership of Evangel to be one of our codes, one of our 10 or 12 codes. We're in the middle of kind of rewriting them, but says we're raw, real, and relevant. Interesting thing, and we might not get to all three questions, by the way, but super interesting thing. I think it was the George Barna group did their, what are they called? Surveys. And they asked the question about 15 years ago to millennials, and they asked the question, what is it that you want from the church? And how do you think millennials answered that question? Have I told this?
Well, I know the answer, so I can't answer.
Oh my goodness, I give away all my secrets. Okay. How do you guys think that millennials asked the question? Answered the question. Here's how they answered it. They said, we want relevancy. In other words, answer questions we're asking.
Right.
Right? For cultural things, from the LGBTQ, abortion, atheism, climate change, whatever it is, the questions we're asking of today, answer those questions.
Sure.
Fast forward 15 years, they ask Gen X. No, Gen Z. Are you guys a Gen Z, right?
I'm like on the cutoff year.
Right, but Gen X is older. It goes Gen X, millennial.
I'm the chosen
Gen
race.
Z.
Yeah.
Tiana,
1 Peter 2:9 applies to me. I'm a chosen race of royal priesthood. It's Gen Z.
Tiana could be millennial. She could be Gen Z.
Yeah. I'm kind
basically,
of like, depends on the Google site.
Whatever Google. Yeah.
Yeah. When she wants to decide, do I want to be, appear
mature
older, mature or cool? Okay, so they ask Gen Z. George Barna asks Gen Z the same question. How do you think Gen Z responded? Well, you guys already know, so you can't say. Gen Z says, from the church, we want vulnerability.
Right. Authenticity,
real. Which is totally different. Like, obviously, they still want, answer questions we're asking.
Totally.
But in a day and age where it's like it feels like you can't trust anyone, and it's like, is this fake news? Is it not? What's their bias? Where's the money coming from? Who's paying them out?
Right.
It feels like you actually it's so hard to fully trust someone. That's why I think somebody, an authentic person, the first person that pops in my mind is like a Joe Rogan. It's like, that's why he's so huge, because when you listen to him, he's not paid out by anyone and asking certain questions with a bias. He's just himself. He's authentic, and you can love that.
Right.
And so that's obviously Jesus. That's who Jesus is. That's who we want to be.
Totally. And I think even at the core, like if you dig what's happening there of that answer, we want vulnerability. At the core of that is we want connection. You can't be connected to something that's not real. Yeah. That's not vulnerable and authentic. And so, which is why I think people cling to, let's say, personalities like a Joe Rogan or whatever, because you can connect to them. There's I feel connected to you because you're showing me the real you. So therefore, I can be connected to you and love you. And you can only love and be connected to the version of the self that's being presented. So you got to present the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
totally.
I remember in Tiana, jet in anywhere if I'm just talking too much. Normally I have a hard time talking, but this time I'm just finding words are just coming.
Yeah.
And I think it was in Freedom Session. The creator of Freedom Session, Ken, said, if you are fake with people, people or show a facade, like you're saying, Logan, people can only love the fake you.
Right.
Why is that? Duh. Because that's what you've given them. You've given them a fake you. And then he said the loneliest people on the planet are those people because they never actually can feel loved because they gave a fake them and people can only love the fake them, and the real them
It feels alone. Yeah.
Yeah, they just feel so lonely, can't actually be
which is wild.
Loved. So we're super excited.
We're changing that.
Yeah, changing the culture, because that's our culture, right?
Yep. Totally.
A lot of our culture, Canadian, American, North American.
Yeah, and church culture too.
Totally.
I think church culture specifically, and we are not just going to be harping on churches and how they suck on this podcast, but I think we as a church culture do quite poorly. You know, even think of the cliches when you walk into a church. How are you, brother? Oh, God is good.
Right. As
though like
that's the answer to everything.
Yeah, all hell broke
Nothing
loose this last
happening.
week. The kids were screaming on the way to church. My wife I was waiting in the car for 10 minutes. Well, my wife, you know, like all hell's breaking.
And it's true. God is good.
Yeah.
It's not that that's not the truth. It's that there's something underneath that just remains in the dark and unseen.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, even Tiana, I mean, you like, I didn't, and Jimmy kind of did, but didn't, but you grew up in the church with your dad being a pastor. You're sixth generation pastor's kid?
What?
That would be your, I mean, you have all the experience and the pressures of the cultural norms, which what even is that of like having to be a certain thing every Sunday morning because the culture that's been around that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I think like, I don't know. I think my parents probably did a good job of sort of bridging that a little bit from that cultural norm to, you know, I mean, my parents were very authentic with me in through all the pastoring stuff. So I feel like that it probably enables me to feel a bit more. I mean, I think maybe I'm authentic. I know there's times where it's like there's that professional side, and then it can be, you know, it can be hard to like.
We were just talking about
that.
this.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. That it's like, oh, I do just want to put off the professional side and put in the authentic, or just be authentic. But sometimes you are professional.
Yeah. Especially
on Sundays when things are, okay, we gotta worship practice. We gotta get our songs in order. We have a timeline. We gotta, you know, whatever, and then it feels like, oh wait, was I not being authentic? But I don't think necessarily that's, I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, like there's times and places for different levels of authenticity, maybe.
Yeah, or where stuff just has to happen. Tiana and I were just talking about this the other day that it's so hard to push against the professional church. And I think part of it is that, you know, big church that most people come to. Obviously, there's midweek stuff, and there's mentoring, and there's all this next gen stuff and connection code stuff happening.
Big capital C church.
Yeah, the big thing that like people come to, you know, whether you're Christian or non-Christian, Easter, Christmas, it's like it's Sunday morning, and so you just feel this pressure of like, we got to do this good. Yeah. We got to make this happen.
Right.
This has to be professional. We got to start right on time. Don't go too long or we're going to lose people. And so you feel this pressure of like, I think the default is to go back to like the shallow professional. And man, it is hard to continually climb that mountain of authenticity and vulnerability. Where are times... We're totally off track from what we're going to do, but I feel like this is just good.
Yeah, it feels like it's setting the stage for kind of our vision with this too,
totally.
Right?
Where are times where you guys have experienced the temptation to get fake? Maybe specifically as a leader of Evangel, and maybe even more specifically Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Like you guys must feel that pull. It's not just me. When I'm worshiping sometimes like, oh, how people are watching like, oh, I better give it my all. Where do you guys feel that?
Tiana?
I mean, I feel like that temptation is always there. I think I probably I feel maybe, I feel like I can be pretty authentic and in the moment and real with my specific role as worship leader and part of worship team stuff and with my worship team people. I think probably on a Sunday where I struggle the most to just be authentic is like those weird in between times, in between pre-service prayer and the start of the service, or in between this and that, or you know, even in potlucks maybe, or where it feels like you're kind of like on the move, on the go. It feels like it's easy to just say, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's my default, and it's really hard to know even how to jump out of that, because it's like, oh, I only have like 2.5 minutes
before the
in
next
this
thing
moment,
or whatever. Yeah.
or like,
Right.
you know, or even like seeing people in the grocery stores, like seeing, church people in the grocery stores, you guys in the grocery stores, or, you know, it's not just the grocery store that I spend my time in, but
That's
mostly
where
the
that's
grocery
where she
store.
spends her free
When
time.
your husband and kids eat a lot, you spend a lot of time in the grocery store.
You know, it's like in those moments to actually just like stop, pause, and be like, actually, what's authentically happening for me right now, and how can I share that with you in a
Right.
very quick moment,
Right.
without maybe, you know, I think I probably struggle with being a burden, like without burdening you. But
Yeah,
then also I know
yeah.
that mentality is kind of,
Right.
we're trying to put that mentality out the window too. But
Right.
but yeah, I mean, there is definitely lots of times in worship practice where it's like, okay, we have a schedule, we have a routine, but I feel like more and more for me, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but more and more as connection codes is becoming more a part of our
Yeah.
church family and our community and how we communicate, I feel less and less able to shove down my authentic what's happening for me. Like I had a full on,
Right. In a good way.
a full on breakdown cry in worship practice the other day. You know, I just felt like I wasn't even able to put that away.
good.
No, that's so
Maybe
good.
because I feel like we're getting better as a family at like just being like, oh, I actually like I'm not good at stuffing this down
Yeah.
anymore. I
Yeah.
haven't been
Showing-
practicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's really good.
And I don't even want to say like showing weakness, because that's not weakness. I think our culture is like, oh, that is that emotional side, or crying or breaking down as a leader. That is weakness. Of course it's not. Like that draws like anyone who's been vulnerable with me, like they just go up in my books like nobody's business, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got the real self, and it's like this is the real person or whatever, you know.
Right, but the fear and the lies are always there. Like, oh, I'm supposed to be.
Have your poop in a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm supposed to have it all together in this moment. I'm supposed to be a strong leader in this moment. I'm supposed to not be emotional.
I'm the worship pastor.
Yeah.
Should be good at this.
Yeah, I get that.
Logs.
My answer. I definitely agree with you there, Tiana. Like when in conversation, like maybe even just to like expand on that. I think part of it is like, how do I expend, even when you talk to like, let's say you're just walking through something through Sunday morning, and that's just the dynamic of gathering together with 200-300 people, and you all know each other. You all know each other's names. Hey, how's your week been, or whatever. And this is now the 24th person to ask you that.
Right.
Yeah.
How do I, like, it's not that I'm trying to be fake. It's just like, I'm working at building my capacity up to have the amount of energy to unload again with you and to connect with you. And I mean, maybe I'm just not very good at that yet, but, the temptation would be, it's great, because it's not because I'm trying to hide anything. It's just because I'm just a little bit exhausted from sharing for the 24th time, you know, exactly. Because the authentic me is the same answer every single time. This is what happened for me. And so I find that sometimes it's hard to just be present with each person. Like, I love each person, but there's just and I'm sure it's just not just me as a leader that would feel it. I'm sure anybody in the church would feel this. They just see, you know, they see their friend in this circle, and then they see another friend, and then by the time you got to this person, you've shared 3-4 times.
So you say, I'm good.
Yeah, totally. So temptation there. I also feel sometimes in worship, just even like, I was just even thinking in my head when it comes to like putting on a meeting, a Sunday morning meeting gathering, and we're going after the Lord together. And there is a sense of excellence there where we're stewarding God's house, and we're going after Him. And we do want our sound to be amazing. We do want,
we do.
We want it to be like excellent. Like this is the house of the Lord, and He deserves our very best. And there's a spirit of truth in that worship, totally. And sometimes I feel like in worship, and I've talked with you about this, Tiana, like maybe even specific positions I have on the team, maybe MDing or whatever, where I can start to feel myself stepping out of authentic connection with God to lead musically. Because
right.
Like, let's not all go on the rock and chord progression here, because that's just like not what we want. But anyways, in that moment, I just feel like, I'm stepping out a little bit of my authentic connection with God, my heart to just love on Him. It's that brain space is getting taken up by, let's stay with the okay, we're going here. I feel the Lord on this song. Oh, and like, you're just thinking all those logistics through. So I've definitely, that's maybe a more recent one that I've noticed in myself as our worship dynamic steps into more excellence, which we feel like the Lord is calling us into, still trying to navigate and hold on to authenticity and the real heart posture as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's good. And it is, like, when I say it's an uphill struggle, like, what's that quote about, most of us, something to the effect of most of us are like water. We take the path of least resistance. And when it comes to authenticity, the path of least resistance will always go back to your shallow self, I think.
Right.
Like, you have to work at it, like, get some things in place that and surround yourself with people that are authentic and constantly pulling you back into authenticity. I think for me, in preaching, honestly, like, to zoom in on the Sunday morning, there's so much more than the Sunday morning, but to zoom in on the Sunday morning, one where I feel the pull to, like, be my professional self, which we're always just pushing against, like, what's the line we always say, like, go messy, like, go deep waters,
totally.
go messy.
Right. Yeah.
And it's interesting sometimes when it's like Logan or Tiana or, Vadim is like risking and going deep waters. I'm always on the front row, like, yeah, come on, go there, come on, go there. Cause it's like so many of our amazing encounters or miracles or transformation is on the other side of awkward and authenticity. And I can feel on a Sunday morning when there's just a feeling in the room of, we're all just showing a facade right now. Yeah. And not just the leaders, everybody.
Right.
And maybe not everybody. That's probably a bit of a judgment call, but that's the feeling that I have of, like, we aren't
We're
there.
just going through the motions doing church.
Right.
Yeah. Count in, drummer counts in, hit it. Everyone's staring at the band. I'm trying to lead myself, and you just have this feeling of, like, I'm not there. This isn't like me and the Lord. I'm not worshiping the Lord. I'm very distracted, and not just by the kids that hanging on to my legs, Caius or Lily. And then the other part is in preaching. I can feel like sometimes, and I do think this is a leadership thing, like just actually growing in this as a communicator. But sometimes it just feels like everyone's just staring, hoping you have, like, these wild nuggets of wisdom. And as you're unpacking the word, and the feeling is like, we aren't a family in this. We aren't walking in connection in this. It just feels like me up there, and everyone's staring at me as though I'm in my underwear, which I normally don't preach in my underwear.
Not normally.
Sometimes there's been a couple times, just to get their attention, right? Like, hey, wake up, everybody. But you can feel like, we aren't being authentic. We aren't being vulnerable. I'm not being vulnerable. And then as I'm speaking or teaching or whatever it is, it's going through my mind. How do I break this? How do I break this?
Right.
What do you do? Like, how do we, like, do you just stop and recognize it? Do you stop and pray? A lot of times I'll just stop and pray and be like, Jesus, like, we just need you. We need you. We do not want this to be a professional rock concert and TED Talk. Like, that's just so empty. And that's not what the church has to give. I think the church has so much more to give than simply that, So
yeah, for sure.
I think we're doing okay. And by okay, it's kind of like
we're learning.
We're learning.
We're learning.
Yeah, we're learning. Yeah.
By okay, it's kind of like how a farmer says, it was okay. Like it's barely working, but we want to push into it so much more.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much more. Anything else to say about that? Then I want to ask you guys each one question.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think like Jesus, when the Pharisees come to Jesus and say, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul. The second is like this, love your neighbor as yourself. Like there's this two sided piece of experiencing the kingdom and all that God has for you. And that's being fully with the Lord and fully with others. And I think you can only be, if love your neighbor as yourself is and the way it's presented and when Jesus says it, it's almost as high, or as important. To love your neighbor is to be back and forth, to reciprocate to being loved yourself. So to being loved yourself fully by your neighbor means you have to fully be yourself. That goes back to what we're saying. So Jesus himself is saying, hey, what's the greatest commandment? It's be real with God and be real with people. Right. And love each other wildly. Love God and love people wildly. And so that's the invitation for us. And I think we've definitely emphasized, like we emphasize the love your Lord your God. Of course, it makes sense. But I think we do got to take note that Jesus did say this too. And we got to walk in that, which will just require a little more bravery, because being vulnerable and authentic with God, he's not going to, on his end of the equation is always good. He's perfect. But being authentic and vulnerable people, they might hurt you. That's where it requires bravery. And I think that's where there's a ton of breakdown is like the fear to like be that and do, because people can be whatever they can respond differently to your authenticity and your vulnerability. So, but I think it's great that we're pushing into it and trying to be a brave culture that fights for all that God has for us, with him and with others. Yeah.
We're going to get into so many, like over the next several podcasts, just testimonies and stories and really push into the different risks that we've taken and how some of them have just turned into a beautiful encounter or miracle or whatever it is. And then we're also, I'm sure the stories are going to come out about the risks. I mean, Logan, you shared when you were preaching the other week about the risk you took that was just, I mean, from the outside perspective, looked like a huge flop. Who knows what happened? Maybe all 30 of them are believers or whatever. But we want to get into both those. But I love, without, just an overview, I love the Sunday where Vadim, like we're always pushing that, like deep waters, like go deep waters. That's what Jesus does. He didn't avoid their pain. He waded right into it, right? But where Vadim really felt like somebody's knee was supposed to be healed, right? And so he's like, I'm sensing that somebody has a hurt knee or a destroyed knee and they need healing. Awkward. Silence. Responds, so awkward. Right. Nobody responds. And Vadim, just, okay. Nope. I really feel like somebody's, I think he did this like 2, 3, maybe 4 times even. And I'm on the front row. Go there. Come on. Like, just easy for me to say. It's all Vadim's risk. But like, if I could do anything.
He's feeling like a fool out there.
Yeah. He's feeling like a fool. He looks like a fool. I'm just from the front. Go there. And I think it was like the 3rd time or 2nd or 4th time or something. At least the 3rd. Somebody stands up. Yeah. Busted knee. Long story short, Jesus heals him. They cry. Yeah. Vadim and him hug for like 10 minutes. Yeah. Logan takes the mic. A whole bunch of different other healings broke out. We're going to get more into detail about that. But it's like that's on the other side of huge risk. He looked like a fool out there.
Yeah.
Right.
And how many times do we just miss that because we didn't want to
just saving face,
be authentic? And we always tell people, like, we're leaders in the church. We know what awkward is. Yes. Like we actually feel like we have to justify that. Like we aren't awkward. Like I mean, I am a homeschooler.
You are. I'm not.
Logan's not a homeschooler.
I'm a hybrid.
Tiana's a hybrid.
She half homeschooled.
So I should be the most awkward out of us. I should be the most awkward, but I'm not. Fine.
You might be.
Logan's way more.
We are pretty kind to you.
It is true. People understand I'm a homeschooler, but where was I going with that?
Like, we know awkward. About? I don't know.
Oh yeah, no. It feels like sometimes we have to justify to our people. We feel that completely incorrect, but it feels like we have to justify that. Like, listen, we also recognize that this is awkward.
They're sitting there like, man, this is so weird. Do they know how awkward they are? Yes, we do.
We know this is awkward, but we feel like the Lord's calling us deeply into
We're just operating in faith
authenticity.
here.
Yeah. And I think it's Jordan, your wife's quote.
Yeah.
What does she say?
Holy Spirit is awkward.
Yeah, the Holy Spirit's so awkward.
He's just awkward. He just thrives on our our leaning into faith in those memes, not on our own strength.
Yeah. Why does he do that?
I think it's just
why can't we look cool and be cool and go into those risks?
That's a great question. Lord, could you just tell us why you can't let us look cool? I think all I know is that
die to yourself, man.
Die to yourself. I know is that without faith it's impossible to please God. That's Hebrews 11. I want to say 4. No, I think that's 4. Verse 1 is faith is a substance.
Right.
But there's just something about our walk with God that's like there's a whole realm that seems totally void if you're not walking in faith. And by the way, faith takes faith in me. Like I always say that it just like it means that you don't understand what's happening in the moment. It means that it's like it's all faith is the substance of what's not seen. So when you're walking in the awkwardness in faith because you feel like God's on something, if faith is involved, it means that you're not going to understand. There's some unseen happening there.
Yeah.
And that can look very awkward to the natural eye because there's nothing there. It's the same as when Jesus says to Peter, come, step out of the boat. How many know the water's not walkable until the moment he steps on the water? Right. It becomes walkable. There's an unseen reality available, but it's going to take the pushing into what's not natural and what's not comfortable to access it. That's faith. That's trusting God.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, the Lord is saying, die to yourself. You die to yourself. You die to yourself at every single turn. I think it's Michael Koulianos who says, the Lord can only trust in you what you have fully died to, or something like that. I think I'm probably mashing it up. But does that make sense? That it's like he can only trust what you have fully died to. In other words, it's almost like he's looking at your life and saying, okay, what area have they died to? That's the thing that I can trust because they've fully allowed that seed to fall into the ground so that now it can actually bear fruit. And I think that's why he's not like, okay, you can risk and take faith and be cool at the same time. He's like, no, you got to die to yourself. I want you to drop the cool. Drop that and push into what just looks like foolishness for my sake and watch me move, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask each of you guys a question.
Questions.
We won't take a ton of time. I have 3 questions on there. Here's the question I want to ask you, which, by the way, we have a ton of really good thought-provoking questions that are going to come out over the next 20 years.
20 years.
That we're pastoring at Evangel. The next 50 years. We've all signed a 50-year contract to be staff at Evangel. Okay, here's the question. What in your life took you the longest to unlearn? Let me say it again. And then who's first? Me? Want me to go first?
Yeah, you should go
You
first.
go first.
What in your life took you the longest to unlearn? Love that question. I would say for me, the thing that took me the longest to get, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not blaming my parents. I'm not blaming the churches I grew up in. I'm not blaming the books I read. But it seemed, I was talking about this last Sunday, it seemed like there was this vibe and this theology that God is out to get you and catch you doing it wrong.
Wow.
And it's not that he just couldn't wait to squish you, but he was ready at any moment to squish you.
Wow.
And when suffering came along, it was God, because, you know, this makes you, this will harden you. This will grow you up.
Yeah. Right.
It's God that, you know, my favorite, book in the Bible was Ecclesiastes growing up. I do not like it now. Obviously I know it's there for us, but it was my favorite book. You know, suffering, meaningless, words for the wind. Life is just but smoke. And just felt like there's no purpose. I remember thinking at like 12, 13 years old, like what's the point of living then? It's like, let's just go on to heaven. It felt like it was probably a 10-year journey for me to unlearn that. Happened, from maybe 18 to, well, even now, obviously I'm still learning that. But it felt like that was the biggest thing and the thing that took me the longest to unlearn and completely rewire my mind that the Father's not just out to get me. He's actually a good dad.
Wow.
And he's the giver of every good gift, James says, right? He's a good father. And every positive attribute of fathers that we have is actually from the Father. And John 10:10 says the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. But I, Jesus, God, have come, what? That you may have life and life to the full. What? Proverbs 15:6. How the Message puts it is a misspent life is soon bankrupt. Or the lives of God loyal people flourish, but a misspent life is soon bankrupt. Just understanding and unlearning that God is not out there to squish me. He actually loves me and he wants to flourish me. He wants to see me flourish. He wants to see Logan flourish. He wants to see Tiana flourish. And that gives him so much joy. In the same way that my kids flourishing gives me so much joy.
Totally.
It gives me so much joy to see that they're actually flourishing. And I know that sounds like, well, about time you learn that. I think that doctrine is very alive in the church today.
It's deep.
Yeah. And I think without even knowing it, we, this last Sunday, just lots of people struggling with the goodness of the Father, that God is good and he loves you and he likes you.
Yeah. Huge.
Took me a while to unlearn.
Yeah.
What about y'all? All y'all, longest thing.
I mean, I feel like I'm in the middle right now of unlearning some fundamental things.
Wow.
Come on.
So I feel like I'm almost not even sure how to answer, because I'm like, oh, wow, there's this thing that I know is a lie.
Go there.
And I'm working on believing the truth, or this thing that I know is a lie that I'm working on believing the truth. What you're saying actually is I feel like what I would word it differently, but very similar, I think, to like something that I feel like I'm trying to break up, which obviously,
Yeah.
Because we're married.
Yeah, we are.
But I think like as a mom, deal with this fear of things happening to my children, fear of things happening to Jimmy. I'm sure like every other mom on the face of the earth. But I feel this fear like that I know these things about God. I know that he's good. I know that he watches over me. I know that he takes care of me. But trying to wrestle with all the buts, this happens, but this happens, but this happens. And I think I have always felt this fear that because the Bible talks about suffering producing, I don't know what's that verse where it's like, suffering produces
perseverance,
character,
hope,
blah, blah, blah. In other words, suffering is a good thing, right? And the Bible does talk about suffering being a good thing. And I think I just feel this fear that even though I know he's good, there's a but behind there, or like he takes care of me, but and I feel like I feel this fear that I know that I don't understand all the ways of God. I know that I don't understand all that's encompassed in the statement, he is good. Right? Like I'm sure it's simple, but I'm also sure it's something I don't understand, because we don't understand him. Wow. We're not supposed to understand him. And I just feel fear that because of those things that I don't understand mean that I might have to walk through suffering with my kids, specifically feeling that fear.
Wow.
And I feel like I'm unlearning something that I've believed along the way, that like that maybe like he'll allow things to happen to me because he wants to produce this in me, which I don't even think that's entirely not true.
Yeah.
Like I think that probably is true, but there's something that I've believed that has created a lot of fear in me. That I'm trying to figure out what it is exactly that I believe that's causing me to actually just not trust God in a lot of things.
Wow. Right.
So maybe similar to you, like oh, this big God. Not that I believe he's this big bad God. I actually do believe that he's good, but I just feel fear of what is that? What would a good God do? I know what a good dad would do. But I also know his ways are higher than my ways, and his thoughts are higher than my thoughts.
Right.
And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? What am I missing? Am I missing something that like? Anyways, I feel like I'm learning to like trust God with those things that I'm like, I know there's things I don't understand. And anyways, I'm just kind of processing in the middle of it. You know, I don't know if I could say that I've unlearned something. Maybe that I'm like recognizing like a thought pattern that I keep having.
Right.
You know?
No, that's good. That's super good, hon.
Yeah.
And in the process, and to be clear, it's not like all of a sudden I relearned it and now I've just arrived and have perfect theology around the goodness of God. It's like, of course this has to
process.
That's sanctification. It unfolds.
Yeah. And also, I was just going to say, I feel like the people that understand the goodness of God really well are people that have walked through suffering. You know, like I think of like Mary Vadim. I feel like Mary Vadim understand the goodness of God in a very profound way that I don't think I understand.
Right.
And I also know that the Lord probably wants me to he wants to reveal that to me. But is he going to reveal it to me through like something as painful as what Mary Vadim walked through?
Right.
You know, and I feel, you know,
a Job.
Knowing that the truth that you see is often that people like actually do find God in those suffering places makes me wonder, does he want suffering for me? Sorry, I'm literally processing.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I even just like, I'm following your train of thought too. I don't wonder if it's like, he works for good, all things together for the good of those who love him.
Yeah.
To be conformed into the same image of Christ. So we know that in concept, and I wonder if it's so much of like, I think sometimes and this is so common, we use our experience to determine our theology. Something happens in a movie.
Yeah.
So we understand the goodness of God. How do we get there? Well, we went through suffering. So God used suffering, or maybe the undertone is more, he caused suffering so that he could show me his goodness. And I'm on the side of it. I'm wrestling whether or not I think that's true. But is it rather he's good? The full revelation of his goodness is actually there for you, but it's until you are in our own human limitation to be able to perceive how good that actually is. It was when we were completely in the pits that I really get it now. It's not necessarily that he like had to take you there, but the deepness and the like thoroughness of your revelation of his goodness was really like found right to the bare bones of who you are and the experience that you had. If God is good there, now I'm complete confidence he's good everywhere because I experienced his goodness there. Wow. Does God need to take you there? I don't know if he has to, but for some reason we don't get it until we are there. And then when we are there, if he's good in this, I know he's good for everything. Then I wonder if that's part of it too. Maybe it's not necessarily him taking us there. I don't know. I'm trying to work that out myself. But it's true. It seemed like there are a lot of people, myself included, that when I was there and I found it, then it like my revelation in that was strengthened.
Right.
That's
good word. That's awesome. Logs.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking there's a number.
Only one. You only get one.
Only one.
What in your life took the longest to unlearn?
Probably, I see this in myself still continually. So it's like, it's one I'm still trying. Like I feel like I've had phases of learning it in a certain aspect, and then when you put it into a different genre, I have to learn that exact same thing, which would be again, I guess, just trusting him, which is a lot what you guys are saying too. And I'm even thinking like, you know, the longest obedience, the most delayed obedience step in my life. I don't know. It was like 7 years in.
What?
Yeah.
You disobeyed God for 7 years?
Well, partial obedience is still disobedience.
Did a fish spit you out?
No, not quite. But I mean, for me, it was in my relationship with Jordan before we were married. I felt like the Lord was, some of you guys know my story. One of these times I'll have to unload it. But I felt like the Lord was saying, can you surrender this thing in your life? Which to me, in my younger years as a teenager dating, she was an idol in my life. And just felt the Lord was like, I always knew this like nudging on my heart. Can you surrender this thing to me? And years and years and years, like literally like if we were 14, 15 when we met each other, and it was like, was it 19? Well, like it was like 5 years of like, he's still asking the same thing. Right. And he's not going to switch.
And you knew it was like, so
there's
clear.
like this,
You're like,
and you kind of like ease your conscience by kind of obeying a little bit. partial obedience. Like that, I think we do
What
that.
what is kind of obey?
No, it's like, what can you surrender this thing? And you come before the Lord and you're like on the altar in a meeting. Yes,
Right.
I surrender it in word and in heart posture, but in obedience step. When rubber hits the road,
Nope.
can you actually like, I don't know, delete her contact on and stop talking and like surrender the thing?
Yeah. Wow.
That's hard. So I feel like that's rooted in, does he have something better for me? Do I trust him in where he's leading me in my life, or do I trust my own ability to perceive where I should be going? Do I trust my own understanding? I love this quote. Like, we all want the peace that surpasses understanding. That's what's available for us. In order to get that, Bill Johnson says this. He says, in order to access the peace that surpasses understanding, you have to surrender your right to understand.
Wow.
We want that. We all want the peace of like the shalom of the Lord is good. But in order to get that, you actually have to surrender. I have to understand. It's a peace that's greater. It's beyond understanding. And so to step into that, you have to go beyond the borders of understanding. And so I think that in that area of my life, it took a long time. Like, can I surrender this relationship? And now I'm starting to see it in new areas. I mean, there was different chapters in my life where he's like, I'm calling you here. Can you let go of your understanding to follow me? The newer one for me now is more around like finances. Like,
right.
I'm recognizing there's this gift on my life to build finances and the business mind that I have and whatever. I know how to produce wealth and I can use it for your kingdom, God. But what does it look like for me to surrender my understanding to access what he has? Super hard. Like, I feel like,
right.
And a lot of it's all faith, like, following him. I feel like that, like even just my walk with Jordan, that took forever. Like me just walking around the mountain that he's wanting me to conquer, not getting there, not trusting that what he has for me is good or better. And I find that showing up in different genres of my life. Like, do you trust me here now? What about here? What about, can you do, the big one for us a couple years ago was, can you go follow me down to Redding, California at a ministry school, don't have a job and live off of beans and rice and Mr. Noodles.
And you're not just saying that.
That was
legit.
And can you do that? Can you surrender your understanding? And then after that was, now do you trust me to take you back to the land of the north to go, it's all this like letting go of my understanding and accessing what he has. So far, you would think, it's always been rewarding. You would think that I'd get it, but it just always seems hard the next time he's asking.
Okay, it's always been rewarded.
Yeah, every time. If you, here's the disclaimer, it's always rewarding if you do it the way he wants you to do it.
Yeah.
If you again, partial obedience and delayed obedience is still disobedience. So I didn't work out. Well, did you actually do what he wanted you to do? Or have you continued to follow how long he wants you to be doing this for? I guarantee you, he does work for the good at the end. That is his,
right.
If it isn't good, it ain't done yet.
Come on. If it's not good, it's not God.
Yeah. But
it's not finished.
Yeah, you got to follow
so
him.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, isn't it so interesting though, Logs, that like you say you're like every single time it's worked out, right? You got the girl, you got to go to a sick school of ministry, finances, whatever it is. But it doesn't make the next obedience any easier.
No, it always requires faith. Yeah.
Faith always requires faith.
Yeah.
It's so crazy that it's like the Lord. And it's not even that. It's not even like sometimes we view it like, okay, I obeyed at level 1.
Sure.
Now he's going to ask me level 2, level 3, level 4, which I think to some extent that's true. But at the same time, it seems like it's level 1, level 1, level 1, level 1, and every single freaking level 1 is still just as hard.
Totally. And it's we love he's the whole. You can read through the whole book here. Little plot. What's the word called? Spoiler alert.
Oh, plot
twist.
Hey, plot twist.
Plot twist.
The main character dies, but he gets raised back to life. Of the Bible. Spoiler alert. The whole thing is about relationship. God wants relationship with you. That's the whole point of the whole thing. As he wants you, he's after your heart. And, in our journey with God, we love the answer. We love the miracle. We love the breakthrough. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the Bible literally says, faith is those who draw near to God, believe that he is and is the rewarder of those who seek him.
Yeah, equals almost.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So believing for the reward is a huge part of it. But God loves the journey of us leaning into him in faith. That's like the currency of your relationship with God is that faith aspect of, I can trust you. I'm leaning. I want the reward. I want the breakthrough. I want what's coming. But in the meantime, I'll lean into you and I'll trust you, Dad, though I don't know what's happening. And that's the point where he pulls you in close, and where relationship is strengthened.
So good. Yeah. Come on. That is so awesome. You know what I'm excited for? More podcasts.
Yeah.
With more of you guys pulling the others, pulling people from. Like I was even thinking Ruth Rubel. Some of you guys know her. We all know her. She's amazing.
Wow.
To have her on here and pick her brain and ask her some of these questions and hear what's happening down in Colombia. Pastor Lo Ronquist, good friend of ours.
Amazing.
From South Africa, to pick his brain. Like just so excited and so excited to just process what the Lord's doing. Some testimonies, just conversations. And we definitely don't want this to be like an interview style. One person asks questions. Like we actually just want to chat. Like
talk about things.
Yeah. And get to know each other more and talk about things that we just can't quite on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to hear from some of you guys as well over time. So I'm stoked. This is our first podcast. We look at us little guppies. Don't even know how to do this, but we're doing it.
I hope we pressed record when we started.
Maybe we did. Yeah, we did.
We're good.
Okay. Love you guys. Tiana, I love you more.
Do you want to do a little badoom to end us off?
Yep. Let's do.
I thought it was cheesy.
Let me say this.
Not at the end. It's not.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. No. Sit down.
Yeah, sit down. Shoot. Okay. Yeah, we like it. All right.
Okay, we love you guys, and we're hoping to drop a podcast. The plan is to drop a podcast every single.
Woo.
Should I even say this? Should I say once Okay, why don't I say we're going to drop a podcast once a year?
We will drop a podcast.
Yeah. And then we'll shock them by dropping like 3 a year. No, the plan is to drop one every
week.
I feel nervous saying that.
We feel fear that we're going to overcommit under the liver.
Yeah, sometimes we just get so excited about things. It's like, yes! And then just doesn't last. But this is going to last because we have an amazing coffee maker in here.
And cool decor.
And
it's a nice room.
Cool mugs. Thank you, Jordan Harder and Logan.
Yeah.
For designing this room. Okay. Love you guys.
Peace.
And we'll talk next week.